It's 5:33, so I'm going to get started. My name is Scott Hamway. I'm the MBTA's Director of the Bus Modernization Program. And before we get started, I want to make sure everybody understands that the meeting is being recorded. That's both for all of us to go back and review details from the meeting, but also for folks who weren't able to participate in tonight's public meeting. So it'll be myself. I'm joined by several of my colleagues from the MBTA, in particular Steve Belanger, who you'll be hearing from in the presentation. He's our project manager for the final design and construction phases of the Quincy Bus Maintenance Facility project. Alexander Markevich from the bus modernization team, and we've got a number of other folks helping us out here tonight who you may see. So this is a meeting. This is our second MBTA sponsored public meeting to update the community on the new bus facility that we are planning to build at 599 Bergen Parkway to replace our old Quincy facility. There's going to be a question and answer. There's going to be a question and answer session that we'll hold after the presentation, which I'll describe. The presentation is going to be about, just so folks are aware, probably be about 20 minutes at the most. We'll try to get through it quickly. So before we begin, I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with using the control panel to interact with us. We really appreciate everybody who participated. We got a really good turnout in registrations for this meeting. I think, like you, we would have much preferred to be able to be in the same space with you and have the meeting face to face, as we did back in January when Councilor Palmici hosted a community meeting. But we do want to hear from you. In particular, we want to hear from neighbors, our neighbors surrounding the site. Want to hear from you and encourage you to ask questions, share a recommendation, and really just be a part of the process, even though we have to do it here vertically. During the Q&A, you're going to be able to press the raise hand button to ask a question. Or if you prefer to just type a question and not ask it audibly, you can type a question into the chat box, or if you're participating by phone, you can type *9 to raise your hand. We're going to call on folks as best we can in the order that they raise their hands. And after you raise your hand, you're going to need to wait for it to be recognized and unmuted by our moderators. After you share your question or comment, we'll then lower your hand and you'll be returned to the muted state. We'll also respond to questions and comments that are typed into the chat, which you can do at any point during the presentation we're going to give, and you can do it during the Q&A, and we'll try our best to answer those in the order that they come in. If you have any questions on this process or the instructions, you can please just reach out to our staff using the chat box, and that's the best way, and they can get back to you and help guide you through the process. And again, we apologize. This is not the easiest way to kind of run a public meeting or most natural feeling way, but hopefully we can share some information on the project with you and share some updates, and then have a good conversation afterwards. So I'm going to start today with an overview of our bus modernization program and the project as the design currently stands. And then I'm going to review some of the key updates since the last project update meeting that we held, which was back in June. And then we'll talk about what the next steps for the project look like. And those of you, these next couple slides are repeats of some information we presented at past meetings. We've condensed it down a little bit to save time, but the T launched this program to support our bus system by investing in all of these facilities where we store and maintain our fleet. The sort of goals of this program are threefold. We want to give our workforce the best conditions we can, give them state-of-the-art facilities so they can effectively maintain and operate our buses so we can get out there and provide quality service for our passengers. We want to be able to provide additional capacity so we have the ability to increase service to meet demand when bus ridership returns to pre-pandemic levels, hopefully before not too long. And we also want to support the conversion of the entire MBTA bus fleet to a zero emissions bus fleet. So those are kind of the three goals that we're working towards with this program. And we've got over 1,100 buses today. In order to support that fleet, we have 9 facilities around the region where we store and maintain our vehicles. Be old, with Quincy being among the oldest, and they tend to need significant reinvestment at a minimum. And the Quincy facility, which you can kind of see off by itself to the south here, is a little bit different than a lot of our other facilities, and that it's really serving essentially a local network that's oriented around Quincy and Quincy Center, unlike most of our other facilities, which tend to be serving multiple communities in and around central Boston. The Hancock Street facility on the other side of Quincy Center, where we currently have our facility, it's home to 86 buses. And due to structural issues, some of which we're highlighting in the images here, we're only able to accommodate our oldest buses. Lower vertical clearances in the building prevent us from being able to store and maintain any of the modern buses, which the MBTA has been purchasing since 2010, that have a taller vertical profile. So the facility is rapidly approaching obsolescence, and the MBTA really needs to move forward with a new modern facility so we can continue to maintain reliable bus service in the Quincy area. And obviously one of the challenges is finding a good site to serve that network. You obviously want to stay as close to the kind of heart of the service area that you're trying to provide service in, so you're not running a lot of buses several miles to get to where routes start. And we were fortunate when we identified the Lowe's property at 599 Bergen Parkway. It's as you can see here, if you can see my cursor, it's almost as well located relative to Quincy Center, where almost all of the bus routes kind of operate out of, as the existing facility. So it's a really good location for us to be operationally. So this slide here summarizes at a high level the major elements of the project, features of the building, the layout of the site, and then the changes that we're going to be making to the adjacent intersections and streets. I'll keep this slide up just for a couple seconds. We're then gonna, I'll speak to most of these on the next few slides and use my cursor to kind of highlight what we're looking at. I'm hoping folks can see my cursor when I kind of move it around, as I'll do on the next couple slides. So the building itself, this is a plan of the building. The building itself is designed ideally to accommodate 120 40-foot buses. As I said earlier, we have 86 buses today at Hancock Street. We may open the facility with only 86 buses, but we wanted to build in room to grow. As demand comes back and as things change, these facilities are designed to last for many decades, and we don't want to just replace what we have. We want to give ourselves some room to grow. And the way basically the facility works is buses would come off of Bergen Parkway at that entrance that's been the Lowe's entrance by Deco Apartments, and then kind of pull into kind of the queuing area here. Buses then move in a counterclockwise direction through the facility, starting off in our fueling bay for refueling, then passing through the wash bay. And then if they don't need any other service, the buses then just make a counterclockwise move into this area, which is our storage area. And this facility is going to be our first fully enclosed bus facility for the MBTA, and a lot of our other facilities, either a significant portion or even all of our storage of buses happens outside. So this will be a much different type of a neighboring facility for the community, and then it won't be a giant sort of bus storage area that you're looking out at. But buses that need interior cleaning would move into an area here we have for the interior cleaning of buses. Buses that need that are due for inspection would go through an inspection bay here, and then would pull into our maintenance area, where we've got 10 maintenance bays here, and then a work row to store buses that are awaiting their turn in maintenance. Buses then kind of complete their counterclockwise move back into the storage area for the pullout on their next trip back out onto Bergen Parkway. We've got rooms for parts storage behind the maintenance bays over here. We've also got rooms for break rooms, locker rooms, training rooms, space for supervisors, etc., located in a two-story office space located on the west side of the building. And the building will also have a 70,000 square foot upper level for MBTA office space and storage. This is kind of pulling out so we can see some of the site improvements that were mentioned on the prior slide. So One of the improvements is we'll be completely rebuilding the sidewalk along the Bergen Parkway edge of the property. That sidewalk today is narrow and not in great shape, and has some features to it that make it an inaccessible path of travel. So we'll be rebuilding that sidewalk. We'll be making a new shared use path connection along the southern edge of our property from Grasso Park along Columbia Street down and out to Penn Street and the old Lowe's entrance. And that's to accommodate bicycle and pedestrian access to Quincy Adams Station. We'll also be extending Columbia Street, which currently ends at this intersection with Penn here. And we'll be extending that out to a new intersection at Bergen Parkway. We'll talk about that on a subsequent slide. The site includes an area for employee parking with landscaping, as well as an enclosure that'll house the electrical switching station for the building that'll be out on Bergen Parkway. Let's see. This is a closer look at the Columbia Street extension. Now we're kind of oriented differently in this map with north to the top here. So and this is really to give us redundant access. This would not be the primary means of accessing our facility for our buses or employees, but it gives us important redundant access that we can use in the event that there's traffic backups farther down at the next intersection or anything else that prevents us from getting through that primary entrance. We are advancing designs for this roadway extension in coordination with the city of Quincy. And as we've talked with the city, you know, there's two primary goals here. So one is we want to make sure that this connection does not result in you know, new cut through traffic through this residential street, Penn Street, to get over onto Bergen Parkway. And the second is that we want to make sure that trucks serving the two commercial properties on this side of the building, that's the Sullivan Plumbing Supply and Caniff Monuments, we want to make sure that their trucks and their vehicles are able to make all the necessary movements to support those businesses. So on the slide we have here today, this is just a slide showing that there will obviously be signage as one way to kind of communicate that this is a restricted access roadway and not for cut through traffic. But in our conversations with the city and some other stakeholders, there is an interest in kind of looking at a more physical barrier that as you see in other sections of Columbia Street along the former Lowe's property to the west down by Tabor Street. So we are looking at a more physical barrier that'll help eliminate the potential for cut through traffic. And that's something that we're, as I said, we're working with the adjacent stakeholders on. So the next several images are intended to illustrate the exterior of the facility, what it'll look like from the neighborhood. This is the view from the Deco apartment complex. So you can see here, you can see buses pulling out of that bus storage area here through our access gate onto Bergen Parkway to start their trip out into service. This is an image taken from near the end of Tabor Street. Looking across the employee parking lot of the building, you can see that two-story area. That's where a lot of the break rooms and locker rooms and supervisory space are. And then that top level for storage and MBTA office space. And then the last rendering we have to share is just looking south on Bergen Parkway towards Quincy Adams, with the new facility on the right and the new intersection with Columbia Street on the right there as well. And then just the last few slides I want to spend just kind of running through some of the key project updates since our June meeting. I'll give you a quick update on the plans for the fleet at this facility, improvements that we've made to that pedestrian connection from Grasso Park down to Quincy Adams Station, our environmental review process, and then some of the intersection work and staff engagement that we've done. But before that, before we spend a few minutes on each of those details, I did want to introduce Steve Belanger from the MBTA's Capital Delivery Department. He's going to be leading this project through final design and construction.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Steve Belanger, and I'm a senior PM at the Capital Delivery Department for the MBTA. I actually worked and presented to the city of Quincy before as an MBTA PM for the South Shore Garages project, which included the Quincy Adams Garage. Prior to the MBTA, I also worked nearby for 8 years on Crown Colony Drive at a consulting firm. So I'm happy to be a part of this project and have the opportunity to provide an update to the community tonight. Myself and the Capital Delivery Department have been working closely with the Chief Engineer's office regarding this project over the past several months. Our collaboration throughout key design decisions, design updates, milestones, deliverables, and internal stakeholder engagement will help to make a smooth segue from 30% to the next design phase and beyond. Although the executing department will change, our interdepartmental teamwork philosophy on this project will continue. This will assist in achieving our project milestones, goals, and objectives as efficiently and effectively as possible. I'm looking forward to the next steps and our continued efforts on this project, including public engagement.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And we'll hear from Steve again a little bit later in the presentation, as well as in the Q&A. And I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of Steve over the next couple of years as well. So just to kind of wrap up the presentation with those other updates with what's changed since the last meeting. You know, we've talked in previous meetings about how important this facility is for the MBTA because of our real critical need to replace the existing asset at Hancock Street. But it's also been a really important facility for the T because it represents the first facility that we're really going to go in and modernize in a way that allows us to support our conversion to battery electric bus technology. We have, you know, in our past meetings tried to manage expectations by acknowledging that the facility would be likely to open entirely with hybrid buses instead, as we await battery technology maturing to the point where we feel like we can meet our service requirements and deliver service for the residents of Quincy reliably with that new technology. We are happy to say that based on further analysis of our Quincy routes that will be operating out of this garage, as well as the kind of continued trajectory of improvement for battery technology, that the MBTA does now intend to open this facility with at least a partial fleet of battery electric buses. There's still a lot of work ahead of us to get there, but we are really excited about this, and we hope facility neighbors will be as well. You know, the plan had always been to operate our newest and cleanest hybrids at this facility, which would be a major improvement for the city of Quincy compared to the aging diesel buses which are the only ones we can operate out of Hancock Street. But battery electric buses or BEVs, as the shorthand is, they'll be even cleaner and quieter neighbors. And opening this with a partial fleet of BEVs is going to help the MBTA very quickly understand what the capabilities of the technology are, and should allow us in relatively short order after this facility opens to convert the entire fleet at this facility to BEV technology. So we're really excited about that, and continuing to kind of update the community on our progress on that front. We talked a little bit about the pedestrian connection from Grasso Park over to Quincy Adams Station. So you know, here you see the path in a little bit more detail on the southern end of our parking lot. You know, we heard from a lot of people at that public meeting in June that our initial plan for a sidewalk connection was inadequate. It wasn't going to allow you know, bicyclists to pass pedestrians. It could get crowded even with just pedestrians coming in both directions along this edge. And we were really kind of encouraged to look for opportunities to kind of expand how much space we could allocate to bikes and pedestrians here. So we've gone back, made some adjustments in our parking area, and we were able to widen that out to a wider 10-foot minimum shared use path, which sort of meets the kind of standard definition of a kind of multi-use bike and pedestrian path. So we're excited about that. We think that will be hopefully a good asset for the community. When we last met, we were at the beginning of our state and federal environmental review processes. In November, we received our certificate from the Secretary of Environmental Affairs on our environmental notification form. We had a public session, the scoping session that took place around that many of you may have participated in. That certificate from the Secretary concluded the state MEPA process. And just last week, we received sign-off from the Federal Transit Administration on our categorical exclusion as part of the federal NEPA process, representing the end of the federal process for the MBTA. So those were two important milestones for the project. Another thing that came up in the spring, we entered into a lease with the entity currently controlling the site. This allowed the MBTA to use the parking lot to accelerate improvements in the Quincy Adams parking garage across the street. And at the January meeting, which was hosted by Councilor Palmucci, we were asked to look at pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection right out in front of Quincy Adams by the old Lowe's entrance. To look at, are there things we can do to make that a safer experience, even in the near term for pedestrians, even for just the folks already living in the area, cutting through the Lowe's parking lot or living at Deco. Given the reduction in traffic volumes, trying to access the site from the south as the Lowe's business is closed, we were able to repurpose one of those two left turn lanes, and the result, which if you're local, you may have already seen, creates a little bit more of a pedestrian refuge for folks trying to cross Bergen Parkway. And it also includes a new leading pedestrian interval. So the pedestrians are getting a couple seconds head start on the corresponding vehicular move at a green light. So those improvements are complete. And then, Steve mentioned stakeholder engagement is always an important part of any project that we do at the T. And I think, we work as hard as we can to try to get out and talk with residents and elected officials and other stakeholders and businesses. But I think historically, we've probably been a little bit less good at asking our own frontline employees what they think about a project or how we can make a project work better for them. That's something we've really tried to do throughout the development of this project. And since our last meeting with the community in June, we have continued to periodically meet with our machinists and bus operators at the existing Quincy garage to solicit their input. And then this is the last slide. This is our project schedule. This kind of shows you where we've been. And right now we're at the 30% stage of design. And this is a good place to kick it back over to Steve to kind of run through what the schedule over the next couple of years for the project looks like.
Sure. Thanks again, Scott. So yeah, as you can see in bold here, this is where we're at today. We're at the completion of the 30% design. And the next step is for 75% design to begin immediately. So the 30 to 75% design actually has begun. So we're not losing any time on that aspect. We're getting right into it. Also upcoming after that, we have the anticipated real estate acquisition of the property, the Lowe's property, approximately spring, right around spring / beginning of summertime of 2021. We'll also get into around the fall of 21, the final design, which is the 75 to 100% final plans, specs, and bid package. And in between the final design to the bid of the full package, we're considering a possible early construction package also in the fall of 21 that will include a portion of the construction that we feel we can get done quicker, get designed fully quicker, and get out the door, and to get a jump start on the schedule in order to meet our schedule milestone goal. So the package will be anticipated to be bid in the fall of 21, with commencement of construction in the winter of 21 to 22. The potential work that would be included would be the demolition and the shared use path. And we're looking with the project team to vet that out and complete that. We'll have the full construction commencement starting in the summer of 22. And we have an estimate based on that commencement. We have a substantial completion late 2024. And that is our milestone goal for the project. Thank you, Scott.
Great. Thank you, Steve. So that wraps up our presentation. Hopefully that wasn't too long for folks. And really the purpose of today, in addition to giving you an update, is to hear from everyone who's taken the time to participate and hear any questions you have. Before we start the Q&A, I do want to recognize the elected officials who've joined us tonight, and want to thank them for their participation. I'll sort of run through the list of who we know is here. and then invite any of you to, if you would like to offer any comments before we get into opening up to the rest of the attendees. So Senator John Keenan is in attendance. Representative Taki Chan is here. Representative Mariano's not here, but Will Fallon from his office is representing him. We've got Frank Trementosi from the mayor's office in attendance. City Councilor Brian Palmucci is here, as our city councilors Charles Fallon and Nina Liang. So I guess I would start by seeing if there are any questions that any of you have. I believe Councilor Liang has submitted a couple questions, so I can either open it up for her to ask the question, or we can just read the question. I guess I'll look to Alexandra or Anthony to let me know how we should proceed.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and unmute you, Councilor Liang, if you'd like to ask your questions, or I'm happy to ask.
Good evening. Yeah, so there's just two questions that I had here submitted so far. Thank you, first of all, to everyone for being here tonight, and I'm happy that we're able to have this meeting, even if it is remote. Just, a couple of questions here that I had coming into this, which is one, I wanted to know what the impact of the scaled back services, what that's going to have on this project and the timeline, and what you guys are projecting to have moving forward. And then the second question I have is, how many diesel buses will be able to be phased out with the completion of this project?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Liang, for those two questions. So yeah, the changes that are being made right now as part of the MBTA's Forging Ahead process to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic are changes that are we're certainly all hoping temporary as we get past the vaccine and get past the pandemic and ridership starts to return. So we're certainly looking to make an investment in a facility that's going to be here 40, 50, maybe many more years than that. So we're certainly planning for the long haul rather than the short-term impacts on ridership that we've seen in the last several months. But even saying that, I think it is important to note that bus ridership has been the most resilient of all of our modes of service that the MBTA provides in terms of maintaining ridership. Ridership has not fallen off as much as it has on other modes, and that's a lot of that is because our bus ridership are some of our most sort of transit critical customers, folks who don't have a lot of other options to complete trips. So we're very confident that bus ridership will come back, and this facility is really going to position Quincy to be able to have not just the service it's had historically, but better service, and certainly it's also going to be an opportunity to expand service in the future, depending on what happens with demand. And then importantly, as we noted in the presentation, it allows us to open our first kind of fully battery electric bus enclosed facility. So we're taking the same approach to this facility. That hasn't changed. On your second question, Councilor, the 86 diesel buses that we currently have at Hancock Street, those will be phased out with the completion of this project. It may not be there may be we may move those over here for a couple weeks, a month as we're having vehicles get delivered to the MBTA. But we are buying at a minimum, we'll have our kind of cleanest, newest hybrid buses that will be able to operate out of this facility. And as I said in the presentation, our intent now is to open this facility with at least a partial fleet of battery electric buses. So our expectation would be, assuming that the BEB experience is a positive one, which we're increasingly confident it will be. Our expectation is this facility would, in short order, over a couple of years, transition to a fully battery electric bus facility without any without any of the older diesel buses or even the newer hybrid ones. So I don't know if we had any other questions from any of the other elected officials in attendance. If not, we can go into the general Q&A.
Oh, and we have just a note from Councilor Liang to say thanks for those answers. Happy to take any other questions from the elected officials, or else we'll go ahead into the first question from the chat box, which is with regards to actually the impending snowstorm. So we'll just quickly take this one as best we can and then move on to the questions about Quincy. So a question came in with regards to the XC60s, whether or not they're going to be used tomorrow, given the snow. Scott, do you want to just provide a very brief answer there?
Yeah, this is sort of a question about buses we're not running out of Quincy. These are 60-foot buses that we run out of our Southampton garage on the Silver Line routes, and yeah, we have oftentimes what the MBTA has had to do during snowstorms are the 60-foot buses don't have power to the center axle, and what's happened is that they just maneuverability wise, we need to kind of take them off the road during snow conditions, even with just a little bit of snow, and replace them with 40-foot buses. The good news is that the MBTA has piloted a couple of different newer 60-foot buses, a new extended range hybrid bus, and some battery electric bus 60-footers out of the Southampton garage, and those do include center axle drive, which means we can run them now in snowy conditions. And the good news is going forward as we buy additional 60-foot buses, these are the longer buses that bend in the middle. If you've been out on the Silver Line, or you've been on Blue Hill Avenue, or Hyde Park, or Center Street in Jamaica Plain, but those are buses that are not planned for this facility. This facility, like most of our MBTA facilities, will be an entirely 40-foot facility. So I think the word we're getting from our storm center is that we are going to be pulling, just for uniformity's sake, pulling the 60-footers from service tomorrow, and going with the plan that we've run in past snowstorms with just using the 40-footers.
Okay, great. So next we have a question from Matthew Peterson. Has the MBTA considered additional uses for this location, given the close proximity to Quincy Adams Station, that make it ideal for TOD?
And that's at this facility location. Yeah, so as we were, coming up with our facility site plan, we are using, virtually all of the site for the facility. We're following the same general kind of approach that the Lowe's development featured, with sort of building on one half and parking on the other half. In this case, our building actually is a little bit bigger of a footprint than the Lowe's building had, and we need some circulation space for our buses to get in and out of the facility. So there wasn't a lot of room to begin with once you started to build out our program. We did try to make the best use of the site by building some of that storage and office space, up above the garage. And then we've got our parking lot essentially in the same footprint the Lowe's parking lot was in. We do have sort of security considerations with an MBTA transit facility like this, where it's not as easy to accommodate a mix of uses, sort of private and public, within a space like this. So that's, I guess, that would be the answer to that question. We feel like we've needed to use the entire site to kind of complete our program here.
And then I see that Senator Keenan has raised his hand, so I'll go ahead and unmute you, Senator. And there'll be a pause before you'll be able to chime in.
Great. No, thank you. And I just want to say thank you for holding this meeting again. And thank you for listening to folks relative to the battery electric buses. I know that people will want to see even the schedule that you've announced accelerated, and to see a quicker move towards an all BEB fleet. But I think this is an important step from where we were just a few months ago. So thank you for that. And then just to folks that are tuning in, if you have any questions of the MBTA, certainly you can contact them directly, or if you want to funnel them through our office, we're happy to assist and to get you any information that you may need. This is an ongoing project, and so I think if everybody continues to work together, we'll move this forward, and we'll end up with the premier bus facility, certainly in the region, if not the state, and in the Northeast, and that's exciting. And again, I am hopeful for a faster path to battery electric, but this is an important step. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator, and thanks for your participation tonight and participation throughout the process. I appreciate the comments.
Okay, next we had actually a next follow-up from Matthew Peterson regarding what is the number of electric buses the substation is being designed for?
Right. So basically, when we had been, as we had started work on this process, Matthew, we had been envisioning the conversion to battery electric bus being a little bit further down the road than at opening. So in our conversations with the electric utility provider, which is National Grid at this location, we talked about what our building might need on opening day to support our power needs, and then what that number might grow to when we move to a fully battery electric bus facility. The good news was that even though the MBTA will need to do a study of what kind of infrastructure upgrades are needed on the National Grid side of the property line in order to support our building and battery electric buses, that there's adequate time, has been what we've been told by the utility, to kind of get there. We are meeting with them on a regular basis to talk about this, but all of the equipment in our building is really set up to accommodate that future load, to be able to power an entire facility of 120 battery electric buses. And given the fact that we are now intending to open this facility with at least a partial fleet of BEBs, as we continue that dialogue with National Grid, we will now be talking about kind of opening with the ability to accommodate that full fleet. Even if it takes us a couple of years to phase it in, it won't make sense for us to, in this new timeline, it won't make sense for us to kind of, get enough power for, 30 buses for year one and then go back to them and make additional infrastructure upgrades. So we will be kind of changing shifting that dialogue with National Grid so that we can open with everything we need in order to support the full future build out of the site.
Okay, I'm actually going to take another one from the audience. David Reich, you've had your hand up. I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Hi, I'm gratified to hear that the T is taking steps toward adopting battery electric buses, and I look forward to hearing more details on that as you develop your plans. Thank you very much for listening to the concerns of the people of Quincy, and I hope you'll continue consulting with us as the process goes forward. As the City Council suggested in their unanimous resolution a few months ago, it's the time for battery electric buses is now. COVID has awakened people to public health concerns as never before, and diesel engines are, I think we can all agree, not good for public health. Also, the T's, again, as I'm sure you know, is facing unusual fiscal challenges, and we also know that over their lifetime, battery electric buses save money. So just thank you again, and I look forward to continue our work with you.
Thank you, David.
All right, thanks, great. And the next question comes from Keith Johnson. Can you share your project schedule? This question may have come in before we actually got to that slide, but perhaps, Scott, you want to just pop back to that slide?
Sure, yeah, and I would invite, if Keith has any additional specific questions, either myself or Steve could answer them, or if yeah, that question may have come in earlier, like you said, Alexandra.
Great, okay, we will move forward. There are several questions about BEBs, and since we just talked about those, we can come back to those, but I'm actually going to skip forward to a question from Stefan Wensch about pedestrian safety. so we can get a couple of other types of questions for the moment. Is there a concern about pedestrian safety along the new walkway adjacent to the heavily wooded area south of the parking lot? If so, would there be a safety call box installed? And if not, is it considered safe because of the proximity to Deco Complex and Columbia Street neighborhood?
Yeah, so thanks, Stefan, for that question. So the shared use path, just to sort of get an understanding of the distance, it's about a 300-foot long path that's connecting Grasso Park down to Penn Street, and it's going to be well lit with pedestrian scale lighting for that entire distance, as well as being adjacent to the MBTA parking lot, which will have lighting as well. So safety call boxes right now are not included in the current design. That's certainly something Steve and his team can kind of consider. And I think we can also, I know when we've showed renderings in these meetings thus far, they've tended to be nice sunny days. We could certainly come back with a rendering that gives the community a sense of what that experience might look like at night on that path.
Great. I'll go to one more in the audience from Faye. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this hearing, this meeting. I went to the November 23rd MBTA meeting, and what I read from the reports is that the advanced, my question is about the advanced electric hybrids, the EEHs. What I read in the reports is that those EEHs run on diesel engines, so they don't cut emissions. They're twice as expensive as the old hybrids. And then in the report, I also read that there was the possibility of 50 plus BEVs in Quincy, but that there was already an RFP for these EEH buses, and the funding was already determined, but there was no RVP listed for the BEVs. It seemed like it was just a possibility. So can you speak to that? The other thing about the EEH is, oh no, I mentioned about how expensive they are, that they're twice as expensive as the old hybrids. So can you speak to that whole situation?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll try to. Yeah, Faith, thank you for that question. I'll try to answer it in as concisely as I can. This is again for Quincy residents. Listen, this is about service that we run out of our Southampton garage, which is in Roxbury and provides service for the Silver Line. These extended range hybrid buses were buses that we were considering being the fleet that would go as something similar to it, a 40-foot version of it at the Quincy facility before we kind of shifted over the past couple of months and decided that we believe we can actually open this facility with BEVs. You're right that there's not currently an RFP out on the street or a spec out there for those buses, but that's something that is being developed by our vehicle engineering department. We've got plenty of time before this facility opens to go through that procurement process and get a number of BEVs to open at this site. Just on that comment about the decision that was made for the buses out of Southampton for the Silver Line, it was every one of these decisions, whether it's a facility or a vehicle, they're really kind of independent decisions that have to kind of respond to a number of factors. And there were a number of things that led us to that decision for the Silver Line that are a little bit different than what we're dealing with down here. That vehicle was an option on an existing contract that we could sort of tap into and get the vehicles here quickly. That fleet that runs the Silver Line service is one of our oldest fleets and not a particularly reliable bus. While you're right, it's a hybrid bus. It still has a diesel engine, so there are emissions associated with it. Those emissions are significantly lower than the emissions for the buses that we're currently using on that fleet. One good thing about that technology, and something that we had been talking, I think, at the last public meeting in Quincy about doing here, if we went the hybrid route, is that you are able to kind of program the buses and work with the community to identify sort of sensitive areas where you might want to run off engine. So, you know, those buses that we run on the Silver Line up there, they go through some environmental justice neighborhoods, and we can work with the community to identify targeted areas to run zero emissions service on those routes. Another thing that's different at Southampton than here is we simply don't have access to the amount of power that we need at Southampton to power additional battery electric buses beyond the 5 that we piloted there. We don't, the facility's not really set up to do that. We would need to do a major kind of overhaul of that facility and a lot of work on the utility side to get there. Quincy, we're dealing with kind of a clean slate, and we've engaged with the utility, you know, 4+ years before Steve will have this building open for service. So we've got a lot of time. We can make different decisions here than we were able to make there. And there were different opportunities there that are different than what's happening here. So that's my answer to that question, I guess, Faye. But thank you for the question.
And I just want to remind folks who are on the phone that you can dial *9 if you'd like to raise your hand to ask a question. So you're certainly able to do that, and we welcome that. Moving to the next question from David Cedrone at WATD News. What happens to the property where the buses are now?
Thank you, David. So the Hancock Street property, yeah. So our real focus right now is frankly moving forward with the design work at the 599 Bergen Parkway facility as quickly as we can, so that we can make sure we've got a facility to house modern vehicles in before the existing fleet at Hancock Street gets too old and starts to really have reliability issues that end up translating down to impacts for customers in Quincy. So that's what our focus has been, and then we need to keep that Hancock Street facility up and running until we're able to open this new facility and get everything moved over there. So that's where our focus has been. Certainly, you know, while we have no formal plans for the site now, certainly is when the time comes where we are able to move into this new facility, we can reassess that property and the role it plays in the MBTA's kind of real estate portfolio. And any plans would obviously be a part of a process that would include all stakeholders, including the city of Quincy and neighborhood residents. But we don't at this time, David, have any kind of formal plans. I noticed that the slide has it looks like these like red slash marks on my version of the presentation. Are those showing up for anyone else, or?
Yeah, you might want to go to the next slide.
Yeah, I tried that. It looks like it's something that I don't know if it's like glitched my screen or something, but maybe we'll do it here so it doesn't look like we're crossing out actual information. Or we could actually just go to the, okay. It looks like it went away. Okay.
All good there.
Sorry about that, everyone.
All right, should we move to the next question?
Please do, yeah.
Okay, great. So from Larry Cretin, what is the time range as to when the MBTA would put the buses out for bid? I'm assuming this is with regards to the BEB buses.
Yeah, so the whole procurement process, Larry, thank you, Larry. The whole procurement process can take about 18 months between the release of a procurement spec until we've got the vehicles start to be delivered to the property. So I know that the vehicle engineering department is working to develop the specifications for an MBTA BEB, and I know that that's something that we could be seeing as soon as next year. But if you think about that 18-month timeline, there's certainly ample time to get there so that we could have BEBs arriving, on or around when this facility would open.
Okay, great. There are a number of other questions with regards to BEBs. I think, Scott, I don't know if you want to also make a special call out, or we can make a special call out to folks who are in the neighborhood who may also have other questions about the facility itself. We we encourage you to submit your question or raise your hand and we'll call on you. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions as well. But I'll just move on to the next question. Will the design and construction accommodate charging for all 135 buses?
Right. So the current plan for the design is to have enough charging equipment so that we can charge 120 bus fleet in sort of 2 shifts overnight. In reality, you know, we obviously run a lot more bus service in the morning rush hour and the afternoon rush hour than we run in the middle of the day. So in reality, we'll have opportunities to charge buses in the middle of the day as well. But we've tried to be as conservative as possible as we've kind of planned this out to make sure that if we were restricted just to overnight charging, that we could do it. So the facility will include all the charging equipment necessary to charge 120 buses in 2 cycles. I think I don't know if it was Larry or who had had that question. If it was still Larry who had the question, but whoever asked the question.
I apologize. That was from Keith Johnson.
From Keith. Okay, sorry, Keith. Yeah, the 135 buses. So we 120 we feel like is the number that this facility works best at. 120 is a significant increase over the size of the Quincy fleet today, which is 86 buses. So we're not even sure we would get to 120, you know, within a couple years of opening. It could take a while for us to build to that number. 135 is sort of the maximum number that we think this facility could hold. You know, with a lot of our older bus facilities, Keith, we're kind of jamming a lot more buses in there than the facilities were designed for. I think the Southampton garage opened with like 72 buses. It's got 107 in there today. So there were things you can do like storing buses in the work row, which is intended to be where you kind of hold buses before they're ready to go into maintenance, storing them in the kind of interior cleaning area. We could squeeze in another 15 buses here. And I think because the MBTA has historically kind of found itself having to do that, when we went through our environmental review process with our state and federal partners, we made the decision to just sort of permit the facility for the maximum possible number of buses that you would have here. I think 135 is not a number we envision in the near future. And I think, but we will have the charging capabilities to charge 120 overnight, even if we were to get to that number sooner than we think.
Great. Okay, we have one from Mary Whitfield. Is there an estimated total project cost for this?
Yes, I may. Well, I may defer to Steve, since Steve's sort of managing the construction phase, to just use the. There are a lot of different. There's the construction costs. There are a lot of other sort of administrative and soft costs. I'll let Steve use the number that he wants to be using.
Sure. Well, yeah, and because we're only at the 30% right now, the number that was advertised publicly, the construction cost estimate that was in the request for proposals for the designer is $250 million. So that's the current number for the construction cost estimate, and that will be further vetted through the design process as we go beyond 30%. But that number was published in the request for qualifications and request for proposal package public advertisement on the MBTA website.
Thank you, Steve. And I think that number is in the same general ballpark of the number that we shared with the community at our last public meeting as well.
Okay, and we had another follow-up question from Stefan with regards to the site. Who will be responsible for enforcing the limited access roadways and connections such as Tabor Street, Columbia Street, Penn Street? Will it be the MBTA Transit Police, the Quincy Police, or a combination of both?
Right, so those conversations are ongoing. So right now, Tabor Street, Columbia Street, Penn Street, those are all City of Quincy streets that will continue to be so. We're not proposing any changes. I actually had a call from a member of the community last week who was asking about those barriers that are in place today on either side of the Tabor and Columbia intersection. we're not proposing any changes to those. Those would remain in place. The extension itself, this is a new extension, so we're in conversations with the city of Quincy about the final sort of disposition of that piece of the roadway. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Stefan, we're showing signage at we certainly know at a minimum there will need to be signage on Bergen Parkway communicating that this is a limited access authorized vehicle only roadway. But we've heard clearly from the city, from Councilor Palmucci and other stakeholders that really encouraging the T to explore the possibility of using some kind of physical barrier similar to the ones that are in place that I just mentioned over by Tabor Street, as well as the access gate that the two commercial properties currently use when they're passing through the Lowe's parking lot. So that's something that we're exploring right now and trying to work through and talk with stakeholders about. So we don't have all the answers at this point, Stefan, on that question.
Okay, and we have another question on the buses from Rob Kanata. Will the battery electric buses exclusively charge in the garage, or is there opportunity charging at terminal stations or along the route a planned part of the electrification strategy?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, that's a good question. And we talked about it earlier. We've taken a really conservative approach with the design. And when we made the decision that we feel like we could open with BEVs, we were also trying to be really conservative, and we sort of approached this assuming that we would have to charge everything overnight at the depot. As I said earlier, the reality is we have a lot of buses that come back for 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the day. We can use that time to charge buses that need it. But I think your question's good, because I think as the MBTA moves into a fully BEV future, we're going to want to be looking at opportunities to charge these buses when they're out kind of in the field and in service. It just gives us more flexibility, more reliability. So those are things we're exploring. There's a couple kind of logical places where that might want to happen in the Quincy context, but really just want to emphasize that for this kind of first big deployment of BEVs, we want to really make sure we've got what we need to be able to deploy them, rather to charge them at the depot if we need to be restricted just to doing that. But we are looking at opportunities for in-route charging, and quite frankly, that'll get even more important as you get into other garages in the MBTA system to make sure we can do that.
Sorry, I was muted there. All right, going to a question from John McNeil. John actually asked couple of questions, so I'll just combine them. Are the buses too big to negotiate our roads, and are they made in China? And why battery buses when we have a surplus of natural gas and oil? Where is the waste lead batteries disposed?
Okay, I can answer a couple of those. I may need to ask for help on a couple, or get back to John if we can't answer them at the meeting today. But yeah, these buses are going to be the same buses, John, that we run out of the Hancock Street facility. They're going to be 40-foot buses. So I know we've been talking a little bit about 60-foot buses because of some of the questions we got earlier. But these are going to be all 40-foot buses that we're running out of this facility. They'll be able to negotiate any of the streets that bus routes serve today in Quincy, as well as the immediate environs around the facility. Any buses the MBTA purchases have to be compliant with Buy America. So we do need to buy buses that are manufactured here in the U.S. There is one manufacturer that is a Chinese-based company that has manufacturing facilities in the U.S. So even if that were the company that ended up winning the bid to provide battery buses, those would still be buses manufactured in the U.S. And I think I may need to get back to you, John.
I can pause on the third question.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then, yeah, the general reason why we're going down this route, is just it's just an MBTA focus. It's not just the MBTA. It's Mass DOT. It's the state. It's, you know, we're all trying to do whatever we can to move away from fossil fuel vehicles and reduce emissions. Where our buses, we like to think of our buses as being part of the solution, even when they're you know, even back when they were diesel buses, right? Because it's allowing us to get a lot of people out of cars and onto more efficient vehicles. But these vehicles are running through densely populated communities, and it's really important that we do our part. Even if buses are a relatively small fraction of the emissions in the Boston area, we think it's important for us to lead by example. And it's important for the communities we operate in to try to move to the cleanest vehicles we can. And specifically for the neighborhoods that are going to host facilities like this, we think that we can make these facilities quieter and cleaner by running battery buses as opposed to the diesel garage we have over on Hancock Street. We think that's a really important way that we can be a good neighbor for facilities like this.
Okay, and we might have had more information also on the batteries being recycled. That all the batteries are recycled.
Oh, okay.
And the MBTA has a contract for disposal of universal waste, which includes batteries.
Oh, thanks, Alexandra. And thanks for the question.
Yes, sorry about the four-parter there. I could have broken that up a little more. So the next question we
I need
have
to write them down better.
comes from Scott Jackson. Does the MBTA have the financing to pay for the $250 million cost of this project?
Yeah, thanks, Scott, for that question. Yeah, so the MBTA is fully committed to this project, as we noted in the description earlier. You know, the clock is ticking on our Hancock Street facility. The buses we run out of there range from 11 to 13 years old. 14 years is usually a good estimate of how long you can get reliable service out of a bus before you start to run into more significant reliability issues. We can't physically fit the newer buses we're buying at other garages. We can't physically fit those in this garage due to vertical clearance issues. So we really need to get a new facility in place, you know, as soon as possible. And frankly, the end of 2024 is probably already kind of pushing it in terms of when we'd ideally be able to replace this fleet. So this is a commitment of the MBTA to move forward with this. We have the resources in place to complete the design effort, to acquire the real estate. Those are significant investments, down payments of the T on this project. And there's every expectation when we update our capital budget this spring, which we do on an annual basis, that we'll have the resources in there to advance the construction of this project.
Okay, and then we had a follow-up from Keith Johnson. What is the lead time for the delivery of BEBs when the order is placed? I'm not sure if that
answered. Yeah, I think we answered that one. It's about an 18-month process before the vehicles start to arrive on property.
And then we have one from Stacy Rubin. How will the team monitor and track when a bus is running on electric power? I assume this is about the EEHs.
Right. Yeah. So the buses, they have software on the vehicles that allow us to kind of monitor when they're on engine or off engine. So we will be able to kind of pull that data and also use it in the case, in the example I was giving earlier about a bus that's running through environmental justice communities or you know, school zones or what have you. We'll be able to program that. We're working with the manufacturer to be able to program the buses so that they could run off engine in those kind of predetermined locations. And that's the type of thing, Stacy, we can get, you know, we can certainly get more information that we can provide you on that, more specific information if you're looking to do a deeper dive on the technical aspects of that.
Okay, and we have just a couple more from the audience. So Francis Shannon, how does the MBTA plan to address the existing vehicular easement running between the existing Lowe's building and Bergen Parkway in favor of 94 Liberty Street?
So is that so 94 Liberty Street? Is that the Sullivan Plumbing Supply address? Is that the address she's I think that's probably that's my guess that Francis, that's what Francis is referring to here. So yeah, we're working with, there are a few easements associated with the property. We are working with those stakeholders to make sure we come up with a satisfactory solution to sort of keep that access whole. And I think it was, yeah, if it was the Sullivan Plumbing Supply, which, you know, I think of as Columbia Street, because that's the end of that facility that we're dealing with. But yeah, I think the front door is over on Liberty Street, and yeah, that Columbia Street extension would certainly provide an opportunity for their trucks and vehicles to get in and access their site. And we've you know, we've had conversations with the property owner there, and have been working and coordinating with him on that.
And then the last comment perhaps was to chime into the discussion about recycling of batteries. It's just from Paula Masoli to share an article on the second life of batteries from electric buses, which are being reused as storage units currently in Northern Europe. And it's a Volvo Buses article. So thanks for sharing that, Paula. I think that's helpful to know that there's those types of opportunities out there.
Is that something that other attendees are able to access that link, or is it a?
I can send it out. Paula, I'll send out your message to everybody if that sounds good. So that was from Paula Masoli. So I don't see any other questions in the queue at this time, or any hands raised. Certainly send them in, and then it will just give you a minute or two. If there's any additional questions, there's certainly some more time.
Yeah, and while we're waiting, yeah, I could just wrap up in the event that there aren't any more questions. We definitely, Steve and Alexandra and myself and the whole team want to thank everybody for participating. You know, we're going to keep the conversation going, as you heard from Steve. You know, we'll be back out again multiple times through the process. I mentioned up front that the meeting was being recorded, so that's something that's going to be available on the website hopefully by the end of the week. And that's the website for this project is www.mbta.com/QuincyBus, one word. And you can go on that website and submit a comment via the email address that's on the website, which is QuincyBus@mbta.com. And we'll be back. I don't think we have a date yet, but we'll be back certainly in 2021 with the team to give you an update on project status and address any new questions the community has in the meantime.
Yes, and just for clarification, we'll be posting the recording as well as the presentation for folks to download. In the time that you were speaking, Scott, one more question came in from Scott Jackson. How many of the buses in use on day one will be battery electric? So we did already touch on this a little bit, but we can have that as the final question for the moment.
Yeah, so I don't think, thanks, Scott. I don't think we have a number yet that we're ready to kind of commit to. We've talked about, you know, anywhere from 20 to 50 buses. We're really trying to make sure we understand what the implications would be of whatever number we choose in terms of running our service, any changes we need to make to how we run our service to support that. And we also have to think about, even though these are going to be a new vehicle technology for the T, we do need to think about our overall bus replacement strategy. The way the T has kind of done bus purchases historically is we've tended to buy them in big chunks when lots of buses get old at the same time, and you're buying, you know, a couple hundred in a single shot, and that just generates a problem down the road 12, 14 years later when all of those buses are aging at the same time. We need to replace a lot of them. Our longstanding goal has been to move to a more smooth procurement schedule where we're buying, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 buses a year. So I think when we look at this facility, we want to buy the right number of battery electric buses for Quincy, but we also don't want to if we're buying other buses that year for other garages, we don't want to buy so many that we're going to have another kind of just big chunk of buses getting old at the same time. But the good news is, as I said earlier, once we've got that first partial fleet on the property and we've proven it out, our procurement process will almost certainly include, options for us to take delivery of additional BEBs in subsequent years, which will allow us to kind of in short order transition this entire facility to BEBs. Are there any other questions or?
We did have one last question from the audience about the timeline for construction to start, which I'm just messaged to that person about the slide on the screen right now. But if you want to just
Steve, Steve, if you wanted to, if there was anything else you wanted to say on schedule, Steve?
Yeah, sure. No, it's pretty much the plan is to commence construction summer 2022, and that's for the building. But just to clarify, we are looking at a plan for an early package to get ahead of the schedule and begin demolition and potentially some of the shared use path construction earlier than that, the fall before that. So 2021, we'll probably bid it out and have construction commence in the winter of 21. And then the plan would be to try to roll right into the full construction of the building to follow in the next year in 2022. Thank you.
All right, I guess we're all done. Yeah, so thanks everybody for taking the time to join us tonight, and don't hesitate to reach out either to myself at my contact information or at the project email address, and we'll try to get answers to your questions as quickly as we can. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.